I shall read the second part of Notes Toward a Supreme Fiction. The title, It Must Change. As I pass from one part of this poem to another, I shall read the numbers of the parts. 1. The old seraph, parcel gilded, among violets inhale the appointed odor, while the doves rose up like phantoms from chronologies. The Italian girls wore jonquils in their hair, and there the seraph saw, had seen long since, in the bandeaus of the mothers, would see again. The bees came booming as if they had never gone, as if hyacinths had never gone. We say this changes and that changes. Thus the constant violets, doves, girls, bees, and hyacinths are inconstant objects of inconstant cause in a universe of inconstancy. This means night blue is an inconstant thing. The seraph is satyr in Saturn, according to his thoughts. It means the distaste we feel for this withered scene is that it is not changed enough. It remains, it is a repetition. The bees come booming as if the pigeons chatter in the air, an erotic perfume, half of the body, half of an obvious acid, is sure what it intends, and the booming is blunt, not broken in subtleties. 2. The President ordains the bee to be immortal. The President ordains. But does the body lift its heavy wing, take up again an inexhaustible being, rise over the loftiest antagonists, to drone the green phrases of its juvenile? Why should the bee recapture a lost blog, find a deep echo in a horn, and buzz the bottomless trophy, new hornsman after old? The President has apples on the table, and barefoot servants round him who adjust the curtains to a metaphysical tea, and the banners of the nation flutter, burst on the flagpoles in a red-blue dazzle, whack at the halyards. Why then, when in golden fury spring vanishes, the scraps of winter, why should there be a question of returning, or of death in memory's dream? Is spring asleep? This warmth is for lovers at last accomplishing their love. This being not resuming, this booming and booming of the new-come bee. 3. The great statue of the General Dupuy rested immobile, though neighboring Cataracts bore off the residents of its noble place. The right uplifted foreleg of the horse suggested that at the final funeral, the music halted and the horse stood still. On Sundays, lawyers in their promenades approached this strongly heightened effigy to study the past. Doctors, having bathed themselves with care, sought out the nerveless frame of a suspension, a permanence, so rigid that it made the general a bit absurd. Changed his true flesh to an inhuman bronze. There never had been, never could be such a man. The doctors disbelieved. The doctors said that as keen, illustrious ornament as a setting for geraniums, the general, the very place to Puy, in fact, belonged among our more vestigial states of mind. Nothing had happened because nothing had changed. Yet the general was rubbish in the end. 4. Two things of opposite natures seem to depend on one another, as a man depends on a woman, day on night, the imagined on the real. This is the origin of change. Winter and spring, cold copulas, embrace, and forth the particulars of rapture come. Music falls on the silence like a sense, a passion that we feel, not understand. Morning and afternoon are clasped together, and north and south are an intrinsic couple, and sun and rain a plural, like two lovers that walk away as one in the greenest body. In solitude, the trumpets of solitude are not of another solitude resounding. A little string speaks for a crowd of voices. The partaker partakes of that which changes him. The child that touches takes character from the thing, the body it touches. The captain and his men are one, and the sailor and the sea are one. Follow after, O my companion, my fellow, myself, sister and solace, brother and delight. 5. On a blue island in a sky-wide water, the wild orange trees continued to bloom and bear long after the planter's death. A few limes remained. Where his house had fallen, 3 scraggy trees weighted with garbled green. These are the planter's turquoise, and his orange blotches These were his zero green, a green baked greener in the greenest sun. These were his beaches, his sea myrtles in white sand, the patter of the long sea slushes. There was an island beyond him on which rested an island to the south, on which rested like a mountain a pineapple pungent as Cuban summer, and là-bas, the cool bananas grew, hung heavily on the great banana tree, which pierces clouds and bends on half the world. He thought often of the land from which he came, how that whole country was a melon, pink if seen rightly, and yet a possible red. An unaffected man in a negative light could not have borne his labor, nor have died, saying, sighing, that he should leave the banjo's twang. 6. Bedaw me, said Sparrow to the crackled blade, and you, bedaw me as you blow, when in my coppice you behold me be. Arche, the bloody wren, the felon jay, KK, the jug-throated robin pouring out, bedaw, bedaw, bedaw me in my glade. There was such idiot minstrelsy in rain, so many clappers going without bells, that these bedaws compose a heavenly gong, one voice repeating, one tireless chorister, the phrases of a single phrase, KK, a single text, granite monotony, one sole face, like a photograph of fate, glass blower's destiny, bloodless episcopus, eye without lid, mind without any dream. These are of minstrels lacking minstrelsy, of an earth in which the first leaf is the tail of leaves, in which the sparrow is a bird of stone that never changes. Bedaw him, you and you, bedaw him and bedaw. It is a sound like any other. It will end. 7. After a lustre of the moon, we say, we have not the need of any paradise. We have not the need of any seducing hymn. It is true. Tonight, the lilacs magnify the easy passion, the ever-ready love of the lover that lies within us, and we breathe an odor evoking nothing, absolute. We encounter in the dead middle of the night the purple odor, the abundant bloom. The lover sighs as for accessible bliss, which he can take within him on his breath, possess in his heart, conceal, and nothing know. For easy passion and ever-ready love are of our earthly birth, and here and now, and where we live, and everywhere we live, as in the top cloud of a May night evening, as in the courage of the ignorant man who chanced by book, in the heat of the scholar who writes the book, hot for another accessible bliss, the fluctuations of certainty, the change of degrees of perception in the scholar's dark. 8. On her trip around the world, Nanzia Nunzio confronted Ozymandias. She went alone and like a vestal long prepared. I am the spouse. She took her necklace off and laid it in the sand. As I am the spouse. She opened her stone-studded belt. I am the spouse, divested of bright gold, the spouse beyond emerald or amethyst, beyond the burning body that I bear. I am the woman stripped more nakedly than nakedness, standing before an inflexible order, saying, I am the contemplated spouse. Speak to me that which, spoken, will array me in its own only precious ornament. Set on me the spirit's diamond coronal. Clothe me entire in the final filament, so that I tremble with such love, so known, and myself am precious for your perfecting. Then Ozymandias said, the spouse, the bride, is never naked. A fictive covering weaves, always glistening, from the heart and mind. 9. The poem goes from the poet's gibberish to the gibberish of the Vulgate and back again. Does it move to and fro, or is it both at once? Is it a luminous flittering, or the concentration of a cloudy day? Is there a poem that never reaches words, and one that chaffers the time away? Is the poem both peculiar and general? There's a meditation there in which there seems to be an evasion, a thing not apprehended or not apprehended well. Does the poet evade us as in a senseless element? Evade this hot, dependent orator, the spokesman at our bluntest barriers, exponent by a form of speech, the speaker of a speech only a little of the tongue. It is the gibberish of the vulgate that he seeks. He tries, by a peculiar speech, to speak the peculiar potency of the general, to compound the imagination's Latin with the lingua franca et jocundissima. 10. A bench was his catalepsy, theatre of trope. He sat in the park. The water of the lake was full of artificial things, like a page of music, like an upper air, like a momentary color in which swans were seraphs, were saints, were changing essences. The west wind was the music, the motion, the force to which the swans curvetted, a will to change, a will to make Irish frettings on the blank. There was a will to change, a necessitous and present way, a presentation, a kind of volatile world too constant to be denied. The eye of a vagabond in metaphor that catches our own. The casual is not enough. The freshness of transformation is the freshness of a world. It is our own. It is ourselves, the freshness of ourselves. And that necessity and that presentation are rubbings of a glass in which we peer. Of these beginnings, gay and green, propose the suitable amours. Time will write them down. I shall now read a condensed version of an ordinary evening in New Haven. And I shall follow the same plan that I did in connection with It Must Change, by reading numbers as we pass from one part of the poem to another. 1. The eye's plain version is a thing apart, the vulgate of experience. Of this, a few words, and yet, and yet, and yet, as part of the never-ending meditation, part of the question that is a giant himself, of what is this house composed, if not of the sun? These houses, these difficult objects, dilapidate appearances of what appearances? Words, lines, not meanings, not communications, dark things without a double, after all, unless a second giant kills the first, a recent imagining of reality, much like a new resemblance of the sun, downpouring, upspringing, and inevitable. A larger poem for a larger audience, as if the crude collops came together as one. a mythological form, a festival sphere, a great bosom, beard and being, alive with age. 2. Reality is the beginning, not the end. Naked Alpha, not the Hierophant Omega, of dense investiture with luminous vassals. It is the infant A, standing on infant legs, not twisted, stooping polymathic Z. He that kneels always on the edge of space. In the pallid perceptions of its distances, Alpha fears men, or else Omega's men, or else his prolongations of the human. These characters are around us in the scene. For one, it is enough. For one, it is not. For neither is it profound absentia, since both alike appoint themselves the choice custodians of the glory of the scene, the immaculate interpreters of life, but that's the difference. In the end, and the way to the end, Alpha continues to begin. Omega is refreshed at every end. 3. We keep coming back and coming back to the rail, to the hotel instead of the hymns that fall upon it out of the wind. We seek the poem of pure reality, untouched by trope or deviation, straight to the word, straight to the transfixing object, to the object at the exactest point at which it is itself, transfixed by being purely what it is. A view of New Haven, say, through the certain eye, the eye made clear of uncertainty, with the sight of simple seeing without reflection. We seek nothing beyond reality. Within it, everything. The spirits alchemicana included. The spirit that goes round about and through included. Not merely the visible, solid, but the movable, the moment, the coming on of feasts and habits of saints, the pattern of the heavens and high night air. 4. In the metaphysical streets of the physical town, we remember the Lion of Judah, and we save the phrase. Say of each lion of the spirit, it is a cat of a sleek transparency that shines with a nocturnal shine alone. The great cat must stand potent in the sun. The phrase grows weak. The fact takes up the strength of the phrase. It contrives the self-same evocations. And Judah becomes New Haven, or else must. In the metaphysical streets, the profoundest forms go with the walker, subtly walking there. These he destroys with wafts of awakening, free from their majesty and yet in need of majesty, of an invincible clue, a minimum of making in the mind, a verity of the most veracious men, the propounding of 4 seasons and 12 months, the brilliancy at the central of the earth. Five, the poem is the cry of its occasion, part of the rise itself and not about it. The poet speaks the poem as it is, not as it was. Part of the reverberation of a windy night as it is, when the marble statues are like newspapers blown by the wind. He speaks by sight and insight as they are. There is no tomorrow for him. The wind will have passed by. The statues will have gone back to be things about. The mobile and the immobile flickering in the area between is and was are leaves. Leaves burnished in autumnal burnished trees, and leaves in whirlings in the gutters, whirlings around and away, resembling the presence of thought, resembling the presences of thought, as if in the end the whole psychology, the self, the town, the weather, in a casual litter, together said, words of the world are the life of the world. 6. Among time's images, there is not one of this present, the venerable mask above the dilapidation of dilapidations. The oldest, newest day is the newest alone. The oldest, newest night does not creak by with lanterns like a celestial ancientness. Silently it heaves its youthful sleep from the sea, the Oklahoman. The Italian blue, beyond the horizon with its masculine, their eyes closed in a young palaver of lips, and yet the wind whimpers oldly of old age in the western night. The venerable mask in this perfection occasionally speaks, and something of death's poverty is heard. This should be tragedy's most moving face. It is a bow in the electric light, and exhalations in the eaves, so little, to indicate the total leaflessness 7. Professor Eucalyptus said, "The search for reality is as momentous as the search for God." It is the philosopher's search for an interior made exterior, and the poet's search for the same exterior made interior. Breathless things, broodingly a breath, with the inhalations of original cold and of original earliness, yet the sense of cold and earliness is a daily sense, not the predicate of bright origin. Creation is not renewed by images of lone wanderers. To recreate, to use the cold and earliness and bright origin is to search. Likewise, to say of the evening star, the most ancient light in the most ancient sky, that it is wholly an inner light, that it shines from the sleepy bosom of the real, recreates, searches a possible for its possibleness. 8. If it should be true that reality exists in the mind, the tin plate, the loaf of bread on it, the long-bladed knife, the little to drink, and her misericordia, it follows that real and unreal are two in one. New Haven before and after one arrives, or say, Bergamo on a postcard, Rome after dark, Sweden described, Salzburg with shaded eyes, or Paris in conversation at a cafe. This endlessly elaborating poem displays the theory of poetry as the life of poetry. A more severe, more harassing master would extemporize subtler, more urgent proof that the theory of poetry is the theory of life as it is, in the intricate evasions of as, in things seen and unseen, created from nothingness, the heavens, the hells, the worlds, the longed for lands. 9. Last leaf that is going to fall has fallen. The robins are là-bas. The squirrels in tree caves huddle together in the knowledge of squirrels. The wind has blown the silence of summer away. It buzzes beyond the horizon or in the ground, in mud under pools, where the sky used to be reflected. The barrenness that appears is an exposing. It is not part of what is absent, a halt for farewells, a sad hanging on for remembrances. It is a coming on and a coming forth. The pines that were fans and fragrances emerge staked solidly in a gusty grappling with rocks. The glass of the air becomes an element. It was something imagined that had been washed away. The clearness has returned. It stands restored. It is not an empty clearness, a bottomless sight. It is a visibility of thought in which hundreds of eyes in one mind see at once. 10. The less legible meanings of sounds, the little reds not often realized, the lighter words in the heavy drum of speech, the inner men behind the outer shields, the sheets of music in the strokes of thunder, dead candles at the window when day comes, fire foams in the motions of the sea, flickings from finikin to fine finikin, and the general fidget from busts of Constantine to photographs of the late President Mr. Blank. These are the edgings and inchings of final form, the swarming activities of the formulae of statement, directly and indirectly getting at, like an evening, evoking the spectrum of violet, a philosopher practicing scales on his piano, a woman writing a note and tearing it up. It is not in the premise that reality is a solid. It may be a shade that traverses a dust, a force that traverses a shade. Eleven. In the land of the lemon trees, yellow and yellow, where yellow blue, yellow green, pungent with citron sap, dangling and spangling the micmac of mockingbirds. In the land of the elm trees, wondering mariners looked on big women, whose ruddy ripe images wreathed round and round the round wreath of autumn. They rolled their R's there in the land of the citrons. In the land of big mariners, the words they spoke were mere brown clods, mere catching weeds of talk. When the mariners came to the land of the lemon trees, at last, in that blunt atmosphere, bronzed hard, they said, "We are back once more in the land of the elm trees, but folded over, turned round." It was the same, except for the adjectives. An alteration of words. It was a change of nature, more than the difference that clouds make over a town. The countrymen were changed, and each constant thing. Their dark-colored words had redescribed the citrons. The Auroras of Autumn. 1. This is where the serpent lives, the bodiless. His head is air. Beneath his tip, at night, eyes open and fix on us in every sky. Or is this another wriggling out of the egg? Another image at the end of the cave, another bodiless for the body's slough. This is where the serpent lives. This is his nest. These fields, these hills, these tinted distances, and the pines above and along and beside the sea. This is form gulping after formlessness. Skin flashing to wished-for disappearances, and the serpent body flashing without the skin. This is the height emerging, and its base. These lights may finally attain a pole in the midmost midnight and find the serpent there, in another nest, the master of the maze of body and air and forms and images, relentlessly in possession of happiness. This is his poison, that we should disbelieve even that. His meditations in ferns, when he moved so slightly to make sure of sun, made us no less assured. We saw on his head, black beaded on the rock, the flecked animal, the moving grass, the Indian in his glade. 2. Farewell to an idea. A cabin stands deserted on a beach. It is white, as by a custom, or according to an ancestral theme, or as a consequence of an infinite course. Flowers against the wall are white, a little dried, kind of mark trying to remind of a white that was different, something else, last year or before. Not the white of an aging afternoon, whether fresher or duller, whether of winter cloud or of winter sky, from horizon to horizon. The wind is blowing the sand across the floor. Here, being visible is being white, is being of the solid of white, the accomplishment of an extremist in an exercise. The season changes. Cold wind chills the beach. The long lines of it grow longer, emptier. The darkness gathers, though it does not fall, and the whiteness grows less vivid on the wall. The man who is walking turns blankly on the sand. He observes how the north is always enlarging the change with its frigid brilliancies. Its blue-red sweeps and gusts of great enkindlings. Its polar green, the color of ice and fire and solitude. 3. Farewell to an idea. The mother's face, purposely for him, fills the room. They are together here, and it is warm, with none of the prescience of oncoming dreams. It is evening. The house is evening, half dissolved. Only the half they can never possess remains, still starved. It is the mother they possess, who gives transparence to their present peace. She makes that gentler that can gentle be. And yet she too is dissolved. She is destroyed. She gives transparence, but she has grown old. The necklace is a carving, not a kiss. The soft hands are emotion, not a touch. The house will crumble, and the books will burn. They are at ease, in a shelter of the mind. And the house is of the mind, and they and time together, all together. Boreal night will look like frost as it approaches them. And to the mother, as she falls asleep, and as they say, good night, good night. Upstairs, the windows will be lighted, not the room. The wind will spread its windy grandeurs round and knock like a rifle butt against the door. The wind will command them with invincible sound. 4. Farewell to an idea. The cancellings, the negations are never final. The father sits in space, wherever he sits, a bleak regard, as one that is strong in the bushes of his eyes. He says no to no and yes to yes. He says yes to no, and in saying yes, he says farewell. He measures the velocities of change. He leaps from heaven to heaven more rapidly than bad angels leap from heaven to hell in flames. Now he sits in quiet and green a day. He assumes the great speeds of space and flutters them from cloud to cloudless, cloudless to keen clear, in flights of eye and ear, the highest eye and the lowest ear, the deep ear that discerns at evening, things that attend it, until it hears the supernatural preludes of its own. At the moment when the angelic eye defines its actors approaching in company, in their masks. Master, oh Master, seated by the fire, and yet in space, and motionless, and yet of motion, the ever-brightening origin, profound, and yet the king, and yet the crown. Look at this present throne. What company in masks can choir it with the naked wind? 5. The mother invites humanity to her house and table. The father fetches tellers of tales and musicians who muse much on the tales. Father fetches negresses to dance among the children, like curious ripenesses of pattern in the dances ripening. For these the musicians make insidious tones, clawing the sing-song of their instruments. The children laugh and jangle a tinny time. The father fetches pageants out of air, scenes of the theatre, vistas and blocks of woods and curtains, like a naive pretense of sleep. Among these the musicians strike the instinctive poem. The father fetches his unherded herds of barbarous tongue, slavered and panting halves of breath, obedient to his trumpet's touch. This then is Chatillon, or as you please. We dance in the tumult of a festival. What festival? This loud, disordered mooch, these hospitaliers, these brute-like guests, these musicians dubbing at a tragedy, a dub, which is made up of this, that there are no lines to speak. There is no play, or the persons act one merely by being here. Six. It is a theatre floating through the clouds, itself a cloud, although of misted rock, and mountains running like water, wave on wave, through waves of light. It is of cloud transformed to cloud transformed again, idly, the way a season changes color to no end, except the lavishings of itself in change. As light changes yellow into gold and gold to its opal elements, and fire's delight, splashed widewise, because it likes magnificence, and the solemn pleasures of magnificent space. The crowd drifts idly through half-thought-of forms. The theatre is filled with flying birds, wild wedges, as of a volcano's smoke, palm-eyed and vanishing, a web in a corridor or massive portico. The capital, it may be, is emerging, or has just collapsed. The denouement has to be postponed. There is nothing until in a single man contained. Nothing until this named thing nameless is and is destroyed. He opens the door of his house on flames. The scholar of one candle sees an arctic effulgence flaring on the frame of everything he is, and he feels afraid. 7. Is there an imagination that sits enthroned, as grim as it is benevolent, the just and the unjust, which in the midst of summer stops to imagine winter? When the leaves are dead, does it take its place in the north and unfold itself goat-leaper, crystalled and luminous, sitting in highest night? And do these heavens adorn and proclaim it? the white creator of black, jetted by extinguishings, even of planets as may be, even of earth, even of sight, in snow, except as needed by way of majesty in the sky, as crown and diamond Kabbalah. It leaps through us, through all our heavens, leaps, extinguishing our planets one by one, leaving of where we were and looked, of where we knew each other and of each other thought, a shivering residue, chilled and foregone, except for that crown and mystical Kabbalah. But it dare not leap by chance in its own dark. It must change from destiny to slight caprice, and thus its jetted tragedy, its steel and shape and mournful making move to make what must unmake it, and at last what can, say, a flippant communication under the moon. 8. There must be always a time of innocence. There is never a place. Or if there is no time, if it is not a thing of time nor of place, existing in the idea of it alone, in the sense against calamity, it is not less real. For the oldest and coldest philosopher, there is or may be the time of innocence as pure principle. Its nature is its end, that it should be, and yet not be. A thing that pinches the pity of the pitiful man, like a book at evening, beautiful but untrue, like a book on rising, beautiful and true. It is like a thing of ether that exists almost as predicate, but it exists. It exists. It is visible. It is. It is. So, then, these lights are not a spell of light, a saying out of a cloud, but innocence. An innocence of the earth, and no false sign or symbol of malice, that we partake thereof, lie down like children in this holiness, as if, awake, we lay in the quiet of sleep, as if the innocent mother sang in the dark of the room and on an accordion, half heard, created the time and place in which we breathed. 9. And of each other thought, in the idiom of the work, in the idiom of an innocent earth, not of the enigma of the guilty dream. We were as Danes in Denmark all day long, and knew each other well, hale-hearted landsmen, for whom the outlandish was another day of the week, queerer than Sunday. We thought alike, and that made brothers of us in a home in which we fed on being brothers, fed and fattened as on a decorous honeycomb. This drama that we live, we lay sticky with sleep, this sense of the activity of fate, the rendezvous, when she came alone, by her coming became a freedom of the two, an isolation which only the two could share. Shall we be found hanging in the trees next spring? Of what disaster is this, the imminence? Bare limbs, bare trees, and the wind as sharp as salt. Stars are putting on their glittering belts. They throw around their shoulders cloaks that flash like a great shadow's last embellishment. It may come tomorrow in the simplest word, almost as part of innocence, almost as the tenderest and the truest part. 10. An unhappy people in a happy world. Read, Rabbi, the phases of this difference. An unhappy people in an unhappy world. Here are too many mirrors for misery. A happy people in an unhappy world, it cannot be. There's nothing there to roll on the expressive tongue, the finding fang. A happy people in a happy world, buffo, a ball, an opera, a bar. Turn back to where we were when we began. An unhappy people in a happy world. Now, solemnize the secretive syllables. Read to the congregation for today and for tomorrow this extremity, this contrivance of the spectre of the spheres, contriving balance to contrive a whole, the vital, the never-failing genius, fulfilling his meditations, great and small. In these unhappy, he meditates a whole, the full of fortune and the full of fate, as if he lived all lives that he might know in Hall Harridan, not hushful paradise, to a haggling of wind and weather, by these lights like a blaze of summer straw, in winter's nick. The Dwarf. Now it is September, and the web is woven. The web is woven, and you have to wear it. The winter is made, and you have to bear it. The winter web. The winter woven, wind and wind. For all the thoughts of summer that go with it in the mind, pupa of straw, moppet of rags, it is the mind that is woven, the mind that was jerked and tufted in straggling thunder and shattered sun. It is all that you are, the final dwarf of you that is woven and woven and waiting to be worn, neither as mask nor as garment, but as a being torn from insipid summer, a mirror of cold. sitting beside your lamp, there citron to nibble, and coffee dribble, frost is in the stubble. This solitude of Cataracts. He never felt twice the same about the flecked river, which kept flowing and never the same way twice, flowing through many places as if it stood still in one, fixed like a lake on which the wild ducks flutter, ruffling its common reflections, thought like monadnock. There seemed to be an apostrophe that was not spoken. There was so much that was real that was not real at all. He wanted to feel the same way over and over. He wanted the river to go on flowing the same way, to keep on flowing. He wanted to walk beside it under the buttonwoods, beneath the moon nailed fast. He wanted his heart to stop beating in his mind, to rest in a permanent realization without any wild ducks or mountains that were not mountains. Just to know how it would be, just to know how it would feel, released from destruction, to be a bronze man breathing under archaic lattice, without the oscillations of planetary past, breathing his bronzen breath at the azure center of time. The woman in sunshine. It is only that this warmth and movement are like the warmth and movement of a woman. It is not that there is any image in the air, nor the beginning nor end of the form. It is empty. But a woman in threadless gold burns us with the brushings of her dress and a dissociated abundance of being, more definite for what she is, because she is disembodied, bearing the odors of the summer fields, confessing the taciturn and yet indifferent, invisibly clear, the only love. The green plant, silence is a shape that is past. Our tubers, lion roses have turned to paper, and the shadows of the trees are like wrecked umbrellas. The effete vocabulary of summer no longer says anything. The brown at the bottom of red, the orange far down in yellow, are falsifications on the sun in a mirror without heat, in a constant secondariness, turning down toward finality, except that a green plant glares as you look at the legend of the maroon and olive forest, glares outside of the legend with the barbarous green of the harsh reality of which it is part. The poem that took the place of a mountain. There it was, word for word, the poem that took the place of a mountain. He breathed its oxygen, even when the book lay turned in the dust of his table. It reminded him how he had needed the place to go in his own direction, how he had recomposed the pines, shifted the rocks, and picked his way among clouds for the outlook that would be right, where he would be complete in an unexplained completion. The exact rock, where his inexactnesses would discover at last the view toward which they had edged, where he could lie, and gazing down at the sea, recognize his unique and solitary home. Final soliloquy of the interior Paramour. Light, the first light of evening, as in a room in which we rest, and, for small reason, think the world imagined is the ultimate good. This is, therefore, the intensest rendezvous. It is in that thought that we collect ourselves. Out of all the indifferences into one thing. Within a single thing, a single shawl wrapped tightly round us, since we are poor. A warmth, a light, a power, the miraculous influence. Here now we forget each other and ourselves. We feel the obscurity of an order, a whole, of knowledge, that which arranged the rendezvous within its vital boundary in the mind. We say, God and the imagination are one. How high that highest candle lights the dark. Out of this same light, out of the central mind, we make a dwelling in the evening air, in which, being there together, is enough. How to live, what to do. Last evening, the moon rose above this rock, impure on a world unpurged. The man and his companion stopped to rest before the heroic height. Coldly the wind fell upon them in many majesties of sound. They that had left the flame-freaked sun to seek a sun of fuller fire, instead there was this tufted rock, massively rising, high and bare beyond all trees, the ridges thrown like giant arms among the clouds. There was neither voice nor crested image, no chorister nor priest. There was only the great height of the rock and the two of them standing still to rest. There was the cold wind and the sound it made, away from the muck of the land that they had left. Heroic sound, joyous and jubilant and sure. To the one of fictive music, sister and mother and diviner love, and of the sisterhood of the living dead, most near, most clear, and of the clearest bloom, and of the fragrant mothers, the most dear and queen, and of diviner love, the day, and flame, and summer, and sweet fire. No thread of cloudy silver sprinkles in your gown its venom of renown, and on your head no crown is simpler than the simple hair. Now, of the music summoned by the birth that separates us from the wind and sea, yet leaves us in them until earth becomes, by being so much of the things we are, gross effigy and simulacrum, none gives motion to perfection more serene than yours, out of our imperfections wrought, most rare, or ever of more kindred air, in the laborious weaving that you wear. For so retentive of themselves are men, that music is intensest, which proclaims the near, the clear, and vaunts the clearest bloom, and of all vigils musing the obscure, that apprehends the most, which sees and names as in your name an image that is sure, among the arid spices of the sun, O bough and bush and scented vine, in whom we give ourselves our likest issuance, yet not too like, yet not so like to be too near, too clear, saving a little to endow our feigning with the strange unlike, whence springs the difference that heavenly pity brings. For this, musician, in your girdle fixed, bear other perfumes. On your pale head, wear a band entwining, set with fatal stones. Unreal, give back to us what once you gave. Imagination that we spurned and crave. Not ideas about the thing, but the thing itself. At the earliest ending of winter, in March, a scrawny cry from outside seemed like a sound in his mind. He knew that he heard it, a bird's cry at daylight or before, in the early March wind. The sun was rising at 6, no longer a battered panache above snow. It would have been outside. It was not from the vast ventriloquism of sleep's faded papier-mâché. The sun was coming from outside. That scrawny cry, it was a chorister whose sea preceded the choir. It was part of the colossal sun, surrounded by its coral rings still far away. It was like a new knowledge of reality.